There's nobody there as far as I can see.
You have to start the webinar before it
Oh.
shows you the, yeah, so there we've got
Oh,
one.
somebody's there.
Kevin
Kevin Miller's
Kevin.
there.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I told Tony to start over fresh again.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. Yeah, the town link was asking me for the codes and password. I mean, like,
Oh, there's Tony. Well, Tim had asked me to start the meeting, and so I was doing my best to follow his instructions and start it. But it looked like there was some discrepancy between like I think it could have been that the previous meeting also ran over, because I think you can't. It looked like there was someone in room 1 up until us, and then it looked like there was a conflict with EDC during the same time slot. But maybe the other meeting just ran over, and EDC isn't actually meeting. I don't know.
yeah, probably nothing to do with you.
Probably, yeah, or I was just mashing at keyboards and nothing.
Have that effect on
saved it.
people. You know, they lock me out, want me to have keys and passwords.
All right, let's call this meeting to order. This is the April 14th meeting of the Southborough Arpa Committee. We'll do a quick roll call. So Ms. Luttrell, I don't see yet. Let me just triple check she's not sitting over in attendees. Oh, she is. So let me move her over.
You guys want me to get the minutes on this one?
Anne had already volunteered to do it.
Okay.
We are pre-volunteered this week. Yeah. Okay. So let's do a quick roll call. Ms. Luttrell.
Here.
Mr. Wood. So John said he might not be able to join because of a work conflict, so he is not here now. He might join later. Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Martell.
Hello.
Mr. Schoner.
Here.
Ms. Rubenstein.
Here.
And I'm here, Andrea Hamilton. So let us start. I'm going to very quickly show the agenda. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes.
Okay. So first item is reviewing the fund request log. I don't think we need to do that because we're going to go into more detail. The only addition I have is I did get that request for the $500,000 from Shopsy. So I have added that line in. I sent it around to everyone, but I think we could discuss more in item 3 here in the interest of time. Review and discuss results from the survey. So I haven't gotten any update from Brian or Matt. So unless they are in the audience, which I don't see them, I don't think we're going to have an update here today. I will reach out to them to see if we can get the new analysis, because I know we had 2 that we were waiting for, and also the previous one, so that we all have that in hand and we can maybe discuss in more detail on Tuesday's meeting. Then proposal discussion. So going back in again, we had a handful of more questions that we wanted to get through here. Then I have Karen Galligan is coming to talk about the DPW request. So she is going to be here from 8:30 to 9. So we can do general discussion up until 8:30, and then we'll stop it, move over to Karen, and then we can circle back if we've got remaining time. Again, the standing item around evaluation approach, next steps. Minutes, the only new one we have this week are the March 17th minutes. So we will vote on those. We have one that's pretty far back. This is John, so I will reach out to him and remind him. And then Tony, I believe you're the April 7th ones, right? From last week. Okay, unfinished business, public comment, and then next meeting, which again, I'll remind everyone that we are moving to Tuesdays starting next week. All right, so with that, let me just triple check that we don't have any of our survey folks in the audience. We do not. So then I think we move straight into item 3 here, jumping back into the proposal discussions. So let me pull up the tracker. Let me know when you can see. Okay. So tax abatement, we didn't have any questions. We've been sort of holding on that one. I will say at some point we need to get sort of a ballpark number on what we're looking at across the next couple of years, right, to be able to discuss. I think it's like 150 this year, but I know the number is higher next year. And we sort of said we would wait till the last minute to get that, so it was most up to date. But since we're at mid-April, would it make sense? Maybe a reach out to Brian Valentine would be the right approach here. I'm not sure if anyone has a different thought on that. Okay, I'll say Brian. Valentine. Tony, I see your hand.
Well, yes. So this one, it strikes me, we just sort of pick a number that we want to use as for tax abatement, or do I not understand this, right? If we're trying to, we could choose to recommend almost any number of the
Yes.
ARPA funds be used to reduce future taxes, correct?
So we can recommend any number. The general goal from the select board is to not be more than a 5% increase each year. And so the number that's likely going to slot in here is whatever keeps us under that 5% increase. And so I think it's probably going to be, it's not going to be an exact number, but I think it's probably useful for us to know, is that $1 million over the next 3 years, or is it $250,000 over the next 3 years?
All right, thank you.
Does anyone disagree with that? I mean, I guess to Tony's point, I mean, we can truly recommend anything here. Anne, I see your hand.
I like Tony's approach that we would recommend a dollar amount. Obviously, the select board can do whatever they want, but for our purposes, if we're trying to determine how much for youth and family services, how much we're recommending for senior center, in our minds, we can say we want to do $1 million for tax abatement, and so much 80,000 for this and 50,000 for that. I don't see anything wrong with us just coming up with a figure.
But it should be, but it needs to be based on something, no?
Based on all the other things we've considered. I'm not saying we should come up with a number right now, after we consider everything.
I would say that we can probably move on from this, because it'll be the select board that assigns whatever they're going to pay for it in the general expenditures with that money, if that's a tag that we choose to put on it. They can pick and choose things right out of the budget for it, just the same way that they were picking and choosing already, to the extent that they have. So I think it's more in the guideline. I think that we would recommend a number that we would think would be suitable, and then they'll just pick a general expenditure item to cover.
Sure. Okay. Moving on. So we're back to senior center. We had no follow-up for senior center, so I'm going to keep moving. Right. Premium pay. So I got the list of part-time versus full-time. There's only a handful of part-time employees. I haven't done the full calculation on it yet, but I think it ends up being something like 350K to cover everyone if we wanted to do the 1,000 for part-time, 5,000 for full-time figure. I don't think we need to talk about it anymore, but that's sort of the ballpark that we're looking at here if we wanted to do full coverage, which we have not agreed to. I understand that, but just if we're thinking about what sort of the range is, it's about 250 with what we have on request and another 100 to cover everyone. Okay. Youth and family services, that's Joe.
Yeah, we covered that in the last meeting, although we did receive a new submission that you sent around, which I did predict and predict to the committee would happen from my conversation. So,
and that's the consolidated number, right? For the
yes, but she upped the number for the part-time person that they would have over a 2-year period.
Do you know what the number ended up being? I honestly haven't looked at it.
Off the top of my head, I'd have to look at the number again. It was somewhere between 46 and 53, I think, for the part-time person. But I'd have to look at the number. I looked at it briefly before the meeting, but I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head.
Okay.
Here, I'll look back at it.
Okay.
But that she was I encouraged her to come up with a more solid number. Her justification was that those people tend to get paid a little bit better than she had originally proposed to us, because they're part-time workers. So in order to get them in without benefits and other compensation.
Yeah, if you want to look it up, just pop it in the chat. I can update this. We have it.
Yeah, when I find it, I'll.
I'm just looking through to see if we had anything else. That was all we had for updating here.
It was, yeah, it was 46,000 for part-time clinician.
Okay.
The other ones were the 20 to 25,000 for interface and the 5,000 for outreach.
Okay. 46,000.
Yeah, that's that's within the letter, 46.
Okay. Good. Moving on. MTC, Tony, did you get anything back from Angela?
So I had a very helpful discussion with Angela this afternoon. And so I learned a lot. And so I'll just pass along a little bit, I guess. So of those 4 projects, I think the website one is certainly the most straightforward of the 4 that have been listed. I think, you know, that one I think is readily achievable if we were to recommend that one proceed. I think the Wi-Fi work, you know, she described that, yeah, there are a lot of, you know, gaps in Wi-Fi coverage for town employees. And so I think maybe that would be the second most tangible project of what was proposed here. It's a little hard to get a handle on why it's that round number, but I think that's, you know, I guess Jason has done work like this before in upgrading Wi-Fi, and so I think that would be the second most tangible. The event scheduling and the interactive conference rooms, you know, we had a very nice discussion about, I think you could describe those as being in the concept phase at this point. And so they are projects that could be done. But I don't think they're certainly not nailed down. You know, they're not ready to go. So I think the first 2 projects are closer to being, you know, near term implementable than the second 2 projects. So that's what I took away from my discussion, and she was great. She was very, very helpful to chat with.
Okay. Just looking through the questions here. We had a couple around cybersecurity concerns. Is that something that came up in the conversation?
No, that would have been another level deeper that we didn't even get close to.
Okay. What is this one? This is the event schedule. So we had a lot of questions around the event scheduling and registration, but it sounds like they probably don't have answers if it's still kind of in the high level space.
I think that's a fair summary. I think we could ask lots of questions about what exactly these last 2 projects are, and it would be hard. You know, we could ask more questions, but I think there's you know, they're pretty conceptual at this point.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Anyone have any further discussion on that, or can we keep moving? All right. Sidewalks. So this is Karen coming to the meeting. I don't think we need to talk about anything until she gets here. Do folks agree with that? Okay. Premium pay we already talked about. I don't think we had any follow-ups for Jim on the clickers. Nothing else to discuss here, correct? Okay. ADA compliance, nothing further. Anything anyone wants to discuss here? I don't think so, right? This one's done, so this is basically funded. Okay. Lundblad Field. There are a couple questions here, but I don't have John. So I think we move on. No further ones on the upgrades for rec. Board of Health. I reached out to Chelsea. She has not responded to me. but I did speak to Kathy Cook. And this was in regards to the position. So we have a recommendation for 2 years worth of funding for a director position. So this 101 is $50,000 for a director position in fiscal year 23, and then 51 and change for fiscal year 24. The Board of Health also has a separate headcount request for a nursing staff. This is someone who already works at the Board of Health, but is currently on a temporary funding. And so they have asked that there's a warrant, or within the warrant, there would be an increase in the Board of Health's budget to add that nursing staff through and fund them through the warrant. Advisory has voted and disagrees with that approach. So their goal is for the Board of Health to evaluate moving to a regional approach. I guess this is something that a lot of towns in Massachusetts are doing. It's something the state is heavily pushing for, and there's a lot of additional state money out right now around regionalization. So advisory's position is that we should use ARPA money to cover the director position and the nursing position this year, not fund the director position through ARPA or commit to it for fiscal year 24, with the goal being that by fiscal year 24, the regionalization has been fully evaluated and a decision can be made about whether or not that's moving forward, in which case it's a totally different staffing model, or if we're sticking with our town-based approach, in which case then these things would presumably move to the warrant. But basically the argument is the way we have it now is we're kind of splitting it, where we're adding a head count through the warrant, but doing the director through ARPA money. And the reason the director isn't there is because we want to study regionalization, but we also have this nursing position that is going on the warrant. So did that make sense? So that's basically where this comes down to. The money doesn't change very much because the nursing position is 54,000, but it would be basically funding a nursing position in fiscal year 23 and not recommending funding the director position in fiscal year 24. And so that's advisory's position on the matter. So I don't have any, we don't have to have the same stance as advisory. That's what the information is. And again, I haven't heard from Chelsea on any of the other questions, which on the staffing was sort of in line with what we just talked about and kind of what the justification is for why it is the way it is instead of this other way. And then I haven't heard back on sort of the benefits of the septic approach and where we are with the software. All right. So moving on, National Grid. So I saw the email that John got from Lisa. It didn't really add any additional information and than what we have here. And it doesn't really sound like it is currently sort of making it into a real project seemed to cause confusion. Is what I will say. Anything else to talk about here? Otherwise, we keep moving. Okay. We had no questions for historic. Property relief, or economic support. So again, we talked about we didn't have any follow-up here, but what we talked about last time was that, we can use this trust fund to really fund any kind of economic relief that we would like to. So I think we've got a lot of flexibility there. Audit support is already done. Mini grants did not have any follow-up. ShopC, don't think we had any follow-up, but I did get the additional requests from them. This one here, the $500,000 for Affordable Housing Trust. I did get that request. I sent that around. There was not a ton of information in it. So I don't know if anyone on this call has more kind of information about where this money would go and what it would be used for. Mimi, I see your hand.
So it would sit in the Affordable Housing Trust until they found a project to use it on. And the Affordable Housing Trust hasn't expended any money for affordable housing in many, many years. So
I wonder
I
if that's.
don't think there's
Sorry,
a
go ahead.
project. There's not a project. It would just sit in the trust fund.
I wonder if that becomes problematic because it sort of we're not allowed to use this money for kind of rainy day funds. Should almost sounds like that.
I can easily see that being a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, my opinion is it's a problem.
Is that one that's worth kicking over to the consultant just to ask if it should even be in consideration, or if it starts to violate the rules of.
You could throw it over there with all the rest of the stuff when the time comes, but I don't see us wanting to put money into a place where we don't know where it's going, when or where it's going to be spent.
Yeah.
I think we have enough. I think we have plenty of things right on our plate. So, and I remember, and Tim may be able to go back over this. I remember there being something about CPA funds that never made it over in there, that there should be more money there to begin with. So,
Yeah.
And my question would be to John, maybe the next time, is this really making up for, lost jelly beans that should be there already?
Yeah, I still don't understand the accounting, because I recall that the CPC sent a good $700,000 into that fund. And I don't believe it was ever used. And so I don't know what's going
on. So if I look, I'm just opening this up really quick. I won't belabor it, but.
So they had a 5-year action plan done that they're working on now as a result of their housing production plan. And the consultant recommended that they have $500,000 set aside in the Affordable Housing Trust. So that's where that came from.
on. And that makes sense to me, Mimi. It makes sense a lot. It's just, I know for a fact that that trust was funded from the CPC a long time ago. And I just don't know. This is back when Bonnie was involved and Freddie. And I couldn't tell you as to why it's not there anymore. Did the CPC try to pull it back at some point? Is that what happened?
They may have, but I think you're right. I remember they had almost $1 million in there.
It's entirely possible the CPC pulled it back. I just don't remember. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the only information I have is that it says Shopsy is seeking $500,000 for affordable housing. Southborough lacks housing stock for moderate and low income residents to obtain or retain housing in town. This need has been identified in several reports created for the town, including the most recent 2020 housing production plan. Creation of this type of housing requires investment from Southborough.
We've been pulling tax money since CPC went live in our town. I forget the exact date. I don't know if you remember, Mimi, but it's been a long time.
2003.
2003, and I don't believe we've done a single affordable housing project using CPA money. So the whole amount we've been taxing since 2003 should all be there somewhere, right?
So it does say under alternative funding, if there's an opportunity there, it says, yes, some of these funds could be allocated by CPC to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah, so just bear in mind this, these are funds that have already been taxed and they're sitting in a bank account and they literally cannot be used for anything but affordable housing. So it should be the first place we go for affordable housing funds.
So is there a need for follow-up here? I mean, again, I think there's some general hesitancy and skepticism around this one, is what I hear, but also like a lot of confusion. I mean, I can ask John to just sort of go back and get us clarity into why this isn't CPC. Is that something that's worthwhile? I mean, if it comes back and there is a real and true reason why they haven't received any funding from anywhere else and there isn't funding that is readily coming, is this something we would want to consider? Joe?
No, I like the words coming out of your mouth. I think the thing is perfect. I think you're right. We should ask more questions about why there isn't money from other places and why it has to be from here, and move on to next item, I think.
Okay. I will just send a note to John and ask him to bring that back. You know, I'm always hesitant to not support affordable housing. This one just seems confusing. Okay. That was the only follow-up we had for Shopsy. Trails. I don't think we had any follow-up. Joe, is there anything else you want to bring up here?
No, I don't have anything additional. Other than the fact that what I didn't mention in the last meeting was something that Catherine had mentioned, which was that there was potential for a grant on the big project that included the handicap spaces, moving the gate and the bridge and the boardwalk. However, the chances of that grant weren't particularly good. So if that project would be a really good viable candidate for us, and if for some great reason they did get the grant, the money would fall back to the select board to reallocate. So it's sort of that one probably is a good one for us to pick out for a capital reason, but also one that, you know, if it comes back, great. Select board can always just reassign it because it'll be relatively quick within the next calendar year.
Good. So that is all of the questions that we had. I just want to triple check that we don't have any of the survey folks, because I was hoping that we would have that information. We do not. Okay. So we have 25 minutes before Karen comes on. Is there anything else we want to talk about with any of these proposals at this point? Anything that we still need clarity on? Any questions that remain? If not, then can I propose we start talking a little bit about our evaluation criteria, because that's sort of the next thing here, right? Is now we got to pick. Good. Okay. So any thoughts out the gate? Yeah, Joe.
I think a million thoughts, but trying to be a little bit more precise. I think when we talked about it before, I'd mentioned, you know, sort of, I saw really multiple avenues for us to go down. And, you know, whether we want to create as a committee a certain type of evaluation form based upon either financial, emergency, all those types of criteria of each project and rating them, or as well as, you know, doing individual prioritization as to how we feel about certain projects. We could do the same thing that we asked the public to do, which was sort of rank them and put them in order and sort of and get the sort of the top ones that we all agree on and get them out of the way quickly. That sort of evaluation way to evaluate. Also, you know, whether we want to do it all by how we want to vote them through and what we really accept as a voting threshold, not just, you know, a majority rule, but do we, you know, how much do we really want to agree on every single thing that we pass? That'd be something for us to talk about. We're lucky that we have a 7-person committee, so, you know, we can do more than just majority, because that always ends up being a little bit fishy if you just go with simple majority. I'd also like to think about the financial priority. I know a lot of us have talked about the amounts of certain projects. I'd put a little less emphasis on the amount of the project and more on the project, the type of project itself and the support for it. But I do agree that there are certain financial considerations. For instance, with historic, only needs $25,000 for signs. I mean, there are certainly some projects like that are easy to pick off, that aren't a big financial burden on the total, that people would definitely see. You know, and as I said, I mean, they're once in a lifetime types of purchases, and those are ones that are really easy to see the value of because of the longevity of the purchase for not necessarily a lot of money. So I think I would personally be open to multiple approaches at once. But I think when we come down to voting on individual projects, it's going to be how much each of us values the individual project itself and how it values the town. So I don't know, spending a whole lot of time on an overall approach where we talk about how we're going to use criteria to evaluate each project and the individual components of it. I think we may spend a lot of time doing that and not necessarily feel a lot of benefit from it. Just my thoughts.
So I'm doing a quick back of the envelope to see kind of what we're at for like numbers. Okay.
Yeah, I would, when we're looking at the numbers though, I mean, there's certain things like sidewalks and other things where, you know, those are sort of open-ended and we could certainly put as much as we want in them. So
yeah,
that's where I think it gets a little bit more tricky and sticky and fun at the same time to mathematically put it all together.
so if I kind of do just like a very, oh, Tony, your hand's up. Go ahead.
I'm happy to wait until you do your back of the envelope, but then I was going to make a comment.
I was just going to say, so I don't have a number for Lundblad Field. If I kind of like grab up everything that seems to like we generally seem in agreement for, it doesn't seem, I feel like there's a couple big ones in here that we kind of think are not seeming super in, and some that seem super in. We're kind of right around the $3 million mark right now, for what that's worth. But to Joe's point, right?
So
like,
can you
want me
break
to
that
show you?
down?
Yeah, you want me to show you what I
us.
got
How
in
did
here?
get
You can
to
tell
$3
me if
million?
like I'm kind of catching things right.
Does that include the things that either the select board has already done or is indicating they'll do?
Okay. Yeah. So if I go through, if I assume about $500,000 for tax abatement, and there's 150 this year, and I know the number is a little bit larger next year, but I'm just $500,000 seems like ballpark-ish. If I assume the senior center, if I assume premium pay, I know that one's a little bit more controversial, but I'm just leaving it in there for right now.
And can you just say what, since I can't read it on the screen? So
Sorry.
what are the
Yeah.
senior
Let me zoom in.
center- The senior center number is,
Senior center is 400.
and what's
Premium
the
pay is 400,000.
400?
Yep.
Yep.
Premium pay is 350.
Wait, there are two different premium pay. That's right.
There's a bunch of different buckets. It's going to be about 350,000.
Total?
Yeah. I think I got. Yeah,
Yep,
I
okay.
have to do like a more, but like again, this is back of the envelope right now.
Yep,
It's going to
no,
be
that's
something
great.
in that order of magnitude. The part-time mental health clinician for youth and family marketing and outreach is 50,000. Marketing outreach is 5. The interface contract referral is 25,000. The affordable housing doesn't have a proposal here. So based, Tony, on what you just said about the MTC stuff, I'm including the town website and the Wi-Fi capabilities, not the event scheduling or the interactive conference rooms.
Yep.
I have the 400,000 for the sidewalks, which I think, right, this could potentially be higher. We already have premium pay. The clickers, I think, are also one that's controversial and will need some discussion, but I stuck it in there for now at 20,000, which we'll round it up. The ADA compliances, this is already done at 50. Lundblad, I don't have a number for, so that's a great big open question mark. There's another 20 for facilities or for rec ADA upgrades. I assume we're doing the raises for the Board of Health staff, and that the staff funding is around 100,000. That's either split between a director for 2 years or going with the advisory, which is the director and the nursing for 1 year. So either way, it's about 100. The vaccination staff, I did some rounding up here because I just started typing in numbers, 10,000. The National Grid property, this one I think is probably one that's a little more controversial, but I stuck it in there, is 250. So you can think about some of the controversial ones as ones that could potentially come out to move more money up into some of the less controversial buckets. The signage for historical, I rounded up to 30. Audit support is already done. I don't have anything here in the economic support. Maybe that's below. Let's go look. I think that's in the 70,000 below. Mini grants for 50. Again, one that's probably more controversial, but I left it in because it's not obviously out. I think we had talked about the feasibility one here was probably not likely. Feasibility, a couple feasibilities. But then this one for 100 grand came in at 70. I put it at 100. So this is sort of economic relief, needs-based bucket here. Again, not going with looking at the
Sorry.
feasibility studies. Yep, sorry,
I'm
go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt. How is that going to work?
I don't know, Tim. Do we need to figure it out right now?
I think if it's not implementable, it should be.
This is
should be-
the trust fund, the trust fund.
How is it different than the one above?
Which one?
You keep going up. Right there.
It's not.
Yeah.
Which
I thought
this one?
I thought that was a trust fund.
Yeah, they're both the same. I don't have a number here. I just need a number listed once.
Ah, sorry. Thank you.
I included the Peninsula Trail and these feasibility studies. Again, I have some rounding up here. I think the trail enhancements kind of just jumped into this number. I lumped them together. I didn't include the consultant because we haven't talked about staffing, but I mean, it's $10,000. Doesn't mean one way or another. And it sounded like we were hesitant on the affordable trust. If I add all that up, I get to 3 million on the nose. We can fund all these things, or we can choose to not fund a few of them and move more money into sidewalks or economic relief. If Lundblad comes back and is $500,000, that obviously sort of skews this whole thing, but we're not like in a position where we're so far out that it isn't feasible to do a big chunk of this.
How many
Joe?
of these
Oop.
can be ramped up if we wanted to? Like, like the needs-based or the property tax. Like, is it just those two or are there others?
Property tax, sidewalks, needs-based, I would say are probably the three that we'd potentially look at adding to.
And how did those three rank on the survey?
Property tax is number 1, sidewalks runs number 2, 3 with the senior center. Economic relief was very low.
Okay.
Joe?
I would also like to say we could even do the unthinkable, which is to allot as much money as we think we should, leaving some left over for a further discussion of, a year from now, because we do have 2 years to allocate it and 3 years to spend it. So that would be another option. Not that I am encouraging so, but just thought I'd throw that out there.
Tony?
It's interesting, Joe. I hadn't thought about that. I guess another option is to, follow the town survey results pretty specifically, and do a larger property tax, reduction. Right? We could cover, we could cover fewer things, but give more money back to property owners in town.
Never lose by giving people back their money.
Or do it again next year.
So this assumption is that it's across 3 years. They only need 150 this year.
Okay.
Yeah, but needs an interesting word, right? So
Okay.
And so we I don't know. I hear it seems like there's discussions about, well, taxes are going up in the next few years. There could be a larger chunk as set aside to try to offset future taxes, or at least in the time period in which this money is supposed to be spent.
One thing I would like to remind everyone of, and this is starting to get into my sort of ranking system, this is federal money, right? It's not local money. So this comes from taxes paid by everyone in town, not just property owners in town. And so I know that economic relief ranks low in the survey results. I still think it's the right thing to do. And I guess now we're sort of crossing over into the debate part, but I would have a really, really hard time supporting a proposal that only provides an avenue to economic benefit to the town or the property owners in town.
To that point, we in our discussions, we already covered that we could literally just write a blank check to every resident of town. So if that's the case and it's economic relief, then we can bypass the property tax and the tax abatement and just do that.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think that's going to win us a lot of applause, to be honest with you. I think doing it in a more targeted fashion is something that maybe we should consider, like using the trust fund.
Yeah, I mean, it ends up being a couple $100 per town resident, which is money, and I never want to be cavalier with people's money, but my gut is that people for whom that makes a significant difference probably need more relief than that, and for those it doesn't make a significant, probably don't really need it.
I appreciate the philosophy discussion we're having, although if we could retrace back to the original point, which was debating how the way in which we were considering evaluating them.
Yep.
It's that I don't mind going on with this discussion, but you know, we started there. Do we want to go back to that, or?
Yeah, we probably should.
I sort of unloaded on everybody. I'd love to know how everybody else felt about the evaluation process.
Tim, I see your hand.
Yeah, there are a couple things that I have in the back of my head, and I'm not certain. I haven't decided on. One of which is, does this item have an alternate source of funding? As much as I'd love to see, for example, as much as I'd love to see the Lundblad Field get renovated, I still don't know why they haven't gone to CPC and gotten that just bonded. And they probably will if they don't get money from us. You know, whereas something like the trust fund, you know, they're not getting more money. I mean, they get money when people pass away and will money into it. So that's one of the things that goes through my head. And then obviously, as mentioned before, how well does it line up with the survey response? And then how much, you know, for any given item, how much of the town is impacted positively? Right, so those are 3 things I had written down earlier to think about.
Yeah, and the alternative funding everyone's responded to. I just haven't had a chance to go through and populate it in, but that's one that we can pretty easily just collate. Mimi, I see your hand up. Mimi?
Yes, and I'll give my weekly plug for the master plan. I think things should be in line with goals for the town. And I agree with what Tim and Joe said previously.
Am I capturing that right? So the categories we've been talking about were alternative source of funding, whether or not it's a master plan goal, the ranking and the survey, and then sort of how much of the town gets impacted positively. Anne?
I tend to think that just about every one of these projects fits in our 4 goals that were stated right at the beginning of the process. And I think that we should definitely put emphasis on the master plan goal and on the survey ranking. You can't, I don't feel we can just say the percentage of town impacted, because people who have hardships may not be a large part of the community, but we still need to support them. People who have kids that play soccer and the field needs improvement, or who have a dog in the dog park. I mean, marginally, we all benefit from those things, but if you went by the percentage of town, I don't know that it would rank high. The 5 things that came up in the survey held a lot of weight with me. I guess that's where my heaviest emphasis would be.
And our top 5 were, it was the tax relief, senior center, sidewalks, premium pay, and Board of Health. Is that right? Am I remembering that right off the top of my head?
Aren't all of these projects really tax relief? I mean, they're not direct to an individual taxpayer, but they all help lower the amount of money that the local tax burden supports, local taxes support.
I think I would say that in many respects, you're correct in saying that. There are a lot of these things that will go on either in the general budget or on the capital items list if they aren't funded, certainly.
Is there anything going into, so I know next year is capital heavy. Is there anything on the list right now that's in plan for next year that would potentially, be the trade-off for reducing that burden? Looking to the folks on the capital committee.
Like the senior center and some, but a lot of these items have to go through annual meeting. So I could say, sure, they're on the plan, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get funded unless they go through the warrant.
Correct, but are they part of what's making it a capital heavy year next year? Or is there anything here that's sort of part of
No,
that?
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
Okay.
But we also said that we weren't going to propose projects from within. So if we want to go to as a committee, we'd have to go look at the capital plan and choose items off it. And do it that way. I wouldn't feel comfortable myself, throwing them at you, but I have no problem, getting a list of us and we can all go through it together and pick some things off it. But certainly,
I'm not, I wasn't saying it because I think we need to identify which there are. I just know that when we say it's a capital heavy year next year, so we're going to need some money, have we already accounted for that in some of these other things we might fund? Do we know that there's some of this is what's making that number? So if we funded it, there would be a lot less needed in sort of generic.
Certainly, yes. We could do senior center, we could do roads, the Wi-Fi. There's certainly, capital items on here that will, if we don't fund them through here, they will end up needing or having to be funded, by capital means and go through the warrant.
Tony, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we ought to make sure we have the results from the survey clear. I thought it was property tax or tax abatement, senior center, purchase the lot was there on that one as number 3, right. But I don't have the final, and then youth and family services and the bonus pay. At least that's what I wrote down as the top 5.
If you wrote it down, you're probably correct.
But I might have gotten it wrong, but we should just confirm it, right?
Yeah.
It seems like aligning with the survey, aligning with the master plan. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know how we align with them. But anyways, we ought to make sure we're crystal clear on the survey results.
Yeah, agree. Joe?
So just one additive and sort of in line with where Ann was going with some of what she was saying. I mean, if youth and family services are going to need an extra person coming in, or if they're going to want interface funded moving forward, if we think those are things that are already going to increase costs in the town, basically all money derives from taxes and all money gets spent. So whatever you're choosing to spend it on, if it's going to be spent on that and we choose to take it out of ARPA money, we're going to end up, saving money for the town.
And so I'll just say on that point, just because something is on this list doesn't mean that the town's going to do it regardless, right? So if that made sense, right? I mean, not everything on this list, if we don't fund everything on this list, that doesn't mean the town's just going to do all these things.
Yeah. And I think sidewalks are the big example that I know the consultant has kicked up. It's something that towns always say they want and they never fund. And that has been, I think, true of Southborough, right? Everyone always says they want it. We never fund it. We never do it. So a lot of towns are using ARPA money to do heavy sidewalk projects.
Yeah, but we can't even ensure that. So
I know, Tim.
Well, I guess that's the next discussion here, though, right? In 3 minutes,
Yep.
That's the.
Okay. So for the meeting Tuesday, I'm away Monday or Friday through Monday, so I don't really have any bandwidth for this. Is there anyone who wants to go through the surveys and kind of, I mean, maybe I could ask Mimi if you can go through and just take a look through this and say what's on the master plan, what isn't, and if there's someone who can kind of run through and figure out what things have alternative funding specified in the proposals. Is that something that someone can volunteer to do? If not, we can do it in the meeting.
I can go through the surveys if you want them.
Okay.
If you want me to go through them.
I mean, it seems like it's something everyone thinks is important, but we haven't done it, right? So
You mean go through and look at what's actually written in there, or just the results?
yeah, right. Like we need to be clear on. I mean, I know everyone, most everyone filled out the form we sent, or if not, they've given us another proposal that's in a different format, but includes all the same information. So we have clear. This is what has alternative funding in a line. It just needs to get pulled.
I can look through them and see what's there.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Do I have, this is just the online access, or is this the paper access as well? So I don't know how that went.
So everything should be in Dropbox folders except for a handful of proposals that I was not able to upload for some reason because Dropbox got all weird. And so I had forwarded all of that in a single collated email. So you should have everything. There's everything in Dropbox, and then there is one alternative email that has the handful of things that I couldn't get to go over.
Okay, I'll go back and look for it.
Okay. Good. So we are just about at 8:30, so I'm going to stop. And let me see if we have Karen in the audience. We do not, so we'll give her another minute here.
So while we're waiting, so just recap for us, Andrea, when do we need to have our recommendation ready?
So it is, there's the official due date, and then there's when we want to have it by. I have to look up the due date. The official due date is mid-May, but we have been asked by the select board if we can potentially have something for them before town meeting on May 5th. So if I'm looking at dates, right, so we have next Tuesday's meeting, which is the 19th. So I think my recommendation would be that we have something to present out the week of the 25th, which is the week before town meeting. We could potentially fit 2 more meetings in before then. We have the 19th and the 26th, so we can use next week's meeting. I think we're pretty close to a position where we can start making some hard decisions, right? Like I think we can use the full 2 hours to sort of knock that out. And then the 26th to kind of finalize our recommendation, and then ask if we could meet with the select board in the back half of the week of the 25th. Would that work? That's the week before town meeting. It gives us 2 meetings, and then a report out to the select board before town meeting. Even if it's not the full final report, we can kind of go through what our recommendations are and how we got there. Anne?
They have a meeting. Isn't the 26th, wouldn't that be their last meeting before town meeting? If that is indeed a meeting date?
I was going to ask for even a special meeting.
Hmm.
I mean, can we get them for an hour? Does that make sense to folks generally? Okay. Again, kind of looking through this list we have, I think we can pull in some additional information that kind of helps narrow things down. And I think we're sort of in a position where there's some like kind of clear trade-offs for where we can bolster some of the more popular proposals, or not, or keep them as they are and fund more things. So I don't have Karen. Let me just see if she's emailed me. make sure I'm not like totally confused. No, we said 8:30 to 9.
You may be having some trouble. Like the rest of us.
Yeah. Just making sure I didn't like accidentally send a weird date. Nope. Just send her a quick note. For those who came in as attendees, were you able to get in through the link on the town website?
I had to come in through the Zoom USA and then manually key in the ID.
So you
I
couldn't
came
get
in
in.
through the town website.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get in through there.
Send her a note. Oh, get onto the Zoom meeting.
So who's running the marathon on Monday?
Has anybody actually gone over to Hopkinton to watch the start?
Only in the past. We had relatives who came from Scotland to come run the marathon every year for about 6 years. And so we'd bring them over, they'd get on the bus, we'd go over and watch. It was exciting. One finished way before the other one, so it was a long wait.
That's
Yeah, it's fun
impressive.
at the start.
Yeah, it's impressive that anybody can finish. I'm not a runner.
Yeah, I don't run even when chased.
My brother ran it once. I think he got to mile 18 and his kneecap slipped off.
Ooh,
He had to bow out. But that pretty much solved my problem. I never wanted to do it.
ugh.
So I don't have anything from her. I just sent a note. Assuming she isn't joining, do we want to talk any more about the proposals? I will ask if she can join next Tuesday.
Does we have Sam here? Does Sam have her phone number? Can you text her? You there, Sam? Listening? Got your ears on?
Hold on. I get it.
There we
Oh,
go.
he is talking permitted. Okay.
Joe, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't have her phone number. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, it was worth a try. Thanks.
She doesn't seem to answer my calls.
So maybe we see if she can come Tuesday then, right? We start with her on Tuesday.
So I will follow up with both the survey folks and Karen to see if we can have those last two pieces for Tuesday. I hate to not use the time since we're so close to having to have a decision here, but I also don't want to use it unproductively.
Well, if
Is
we're gonna-
there?
If we're gonna make any significant decisions, and we don't have John here, so I would,
Mhm.
if we're gonna make any actual decisions on anything, I would hope John would be here.
Yeah, agree. No, I wasn't thinking we would make a decision. I'm just wondering if there's any, I'm just thinking, is there any proposal that merits any additional discussion or anything kind of on our list that we feel like we could potentially strike out or are clear that is in at this point. But I think this sidewalk being such a large line item, it's hard to have the conversation when we don't have like a real clear understanding of, you know, what that looks like.
I think it
Since
would
that's
be
one that
very, I
potentially
think
might-
we all agree, it'd be very helpful to actually understand how productive we can be with allocating money to sidewalks.
Yeah. I
I'd
think that
actually
changes a
like to
lot.
ask her about the road budget and the roads this year too, because I know that, I mean, I drive down a couple of roads and, you know, on a regular basis that aren't in very good shape, and I'm wondering if the road budget doesn't need to be expanded a little bit.
But then after we hear from her, then we have to move things right along. And so having that
Yes.
spreadsheet filled out a little bit more would be very helpful. And then we gotta get moving.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Oh, sorry, go
maybe we enjoy a slightly shorter meeting tonight because we know next week's gonna be longer.
Or we just make decisions quicker, Tony.
I like your attitude.
It's optimistic.
So let me just look back at our agenda. So let's keep moving. So if I go to next steps, our meeting switches to Tuesday, 7:30 to 9:30 next week. Because it's Tuesday, I do need to submit an agenda tonight to make sure it's posted tomorrow. So I'm going to just throw one up to make sure everyone's okay with it. And if everybody is, then I'm going to submit it right after this meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me know if you can see. What am I sharing? Am I sharing? Yeah, you can see it.
Yes.
Okay. So Tuesday, April 19th. So again, standing item, fund request log, review and discuss results from the survey, because I'm hoping we'll have those. Let me put Karen on. So I'm going to assume we will have her. Paste that from this week's. Just add it. Probably won't have any. I'm hoping we don't have anything new next week on the request log, but I will leave that there. I'll just copy and paste from the one this week to fill that line out. Again, then the survey, if there's anything there. Proposal discussion, review proposals, review answers for proposal questions, identify any remaining questions. I think that basically covers what we're looking to do, right? Is the continuing of reviewing proposals. Do we need evaluation approach still on here as a line item, or is it really just proposal discussion?
I'd leave it in there just in case. It
Okay.
covers us.
And then my assumption is that, so we have the meeting minutes from the 17th to approve today. So next week it's the 10th, the 7th, which is last week, and this week's to potentially approve next week. Good. Anything else anyone feels we need to add, change, just? Okay, then I'm gonna just copy and paste the one line. Hope that Karen can join next week, and we'll move on. So administrative business. So we have minutes from the 17th that Tony submitted. Do I have anyone who wants to make a motion?
Motion to approve minutes of March 17th, 2022.
Thank you, Anne. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. No, okay. Then let's take a roll call vote. Ms. Luttrell?
Yes.
Mr. Wood is not here. Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Martell?
Aye.
Mr. Schoner?
Aye.
Ms. Rubenstein?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. And so that gets us to unfinished business. I don't think there's anything we need to circle back on at this point. Does anyone disagree? Okay, so new business, I will open up to public comment. If you have a comment, go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see anyone though, so. All right, I'm gonna assume we can move on. So next meeting, we have discussed, everyone's got their action items. So Mimi, you're gonna look at what's on for capital plan. Joe, you're gonna do a quick scroll through and see what things have. Oh, we may have just gotten Karen. Let me see. Karen, you should be able to talk now.
Yep, I can.
All right,
Um,
good. Welcome.
Thank you. Whoops.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I don't know. I don't know if I have camera or not. I can't tell what I'm doing.
You are not on camera, just voice right now.
Oh, okay. I don't know why.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
I
As long as
can-
you guys don't care, I don't.
It's probably because you're not in the panelists. I just have you give permission to talk. I don't think it matters.
Okay.
Great. Well, welcome. So I know for the folks on the committee, I assume everyone will move forward because we got Karen now, right? We'll switch over to Karen. We'll do the sidewalks. Okay, awesome. Okay. So Karen, welcome. Do you have anything that you wanted to kind of present or walk us through first, or do you want us to jump into questions? What do you got?
I probably just questions. One of the problems right now, I guess I do have something to say then first. One of the problems that is going on right now is that everything is bidding out horrible, right? We've got, the prices are crazy. There's a lot of delays, obviously supply chain, at least for like water mains and stuff, is becoming a problem. We have a couple bids going tomorrow. One of them's the Northborough Road culvert, the other one's the Newton Street water main. And I want to see how the prices come out with that, but I know, and I know that ARPA money needs to be spent by the end of 2024. Is that correct? Or I say I know, but I don't know. Is that correct?
No, committed end of 2024, spent end of 2026.
Oh, okay, so there is more time. Because that's what I was gonna say. It might really be at that point that if the prices are so crazy, the money might be better suited to somewhere else rather than get less for the money. But if because if we bid and the bid just is crazy, I don't know if you can take back what you commit to, or if there's I don't know if you guys make a recommendation, selectmen say, yep, that's what we're going to spend it on. If it doesn't work out, that the bid works out well, if that's what you would still spend it on, or are you stuck, or can you say, let's do it on something else now because those prices are just crazy?
So the select board has full kind of responsibility over this money. So if bidding comes back in a really disfavorable way that doesn't make sense with moving forwards, they can reallocate.
Oh, they can. Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. So then, yeah, so questions would be great for whatever anybody's interested in knowing about. See what I can answer.
And maybe we can start with, I think, sort of the ones that I know we talked a bit about were, I think that the biggest one was sort of understanding if this money gets allocated over, how confident are we that it ends up going to sidewalks and doesn't sort of get shuffled around? Because I know there tends to be sort of like larger pots of DPW money that go out for different projects, right? And so the goal of this committee would be to truly dedicate it for sidewalks and only sidewalks. And then also understanding if we allocated more money, what could we do, right? And then do we have any kind of already preconceived projects that we could use this against at this point? Like what would we sidewalk next and how are we making those decisions? Or those are the things we had talked about
Yeah.
in this committee, and that was sort of the list that we sent over.
Yep. So as far as being able to keep it allocated, we do keep it very separated. So if is the one time it doesn't end up that way is when there's a timeline, right? So that ended up being the issue with the shared spaces grant, is that there was a timeline and it was a very short one. So certain work had to be done and that had to be spent quickly. And we did work related to it. The DOT knew what we did. They were fine with it. Everybody's fine with it. It doesn't seem like it was spent on what people think it should have been spent on, but it was. So we keep everything, we keep the pot. I'm like, all right, the bill came in. So it absolutely would. If we say there's, you know, in this contract, we think we have $400,000 worth of sidewalks, and it turns out the sidewalk piece only costs 300. We'd only use 300. That other 100,000 would just sit for another contract, or we'd go back to the selectmen and say, you know, we don't have anything small enough for this. We can either put it towards, or you can take it and put it, you know, somewhere else. Because we do keep our pots very separate. We blend them into a big project, but we know what we're spending it on, I guess is more the way. So we would do it that way. As far as what we have going on right now, if the money came through right now, we are looking at getting some money from Complete Streets, or hoping to, for the Corderville Road sidewalk. That probably, if we get the 400,000 for it, there would be still some money that we would need from the town funds. So we could use it towards that. The other piece that is we've been looking at and has somewhat ready to go is north on Marlborough Road. So at the St. Mark Street intersection, north all the way up to where the train bridge is, where the sidewalk starts again. We have plans to try to put a sidewalk in there so that there's actually at least Ledge Hill has sidewalk. We've got a lot going on there. I mean, we have the Complete Streets list has a bunch of spots that we need it. Woodland Road, just to get that last gap up to basically the Pike on Woodland, so that at least all that neighborhood can get down to the T and Richards Road. That's something that we've been talking about a lot. And it's farther down on the Complete Streets plan, but it's definitely something in order to get the train station sort of, any of the main roads going to the train station have sidewalks on them. So, you know, as far as we have so few sidewalks in town, we have an unlimited ability or unlimited need, but what we could do without, like, so some of the main streets that need it are the streets that will be the hardest to put it on, right? So Pine Hill and Pine Hill, Flag Road, Sears Road. If people really want to walk it, they're very difficult to walk because they're windy, hilly, and there's not, so you've got vehicles kind of, they don't see you when you're necessarily walking. There's a lot of trees on the side of the road. There's really no drainage. So putting a sidewalk in there is expensive. It changes the entire character of the road, and that's something that the neighborhoods would really have to work into. So that's one that I don't think we could ever spend out by 2026. I knowing how long it took to do Main Street, which was about 18 years to get that to people to agree to it, I don't see that we could really doing something like that drastic would be able to be done by 2026. So it would need to be more smaller scale stuff. And even that, working with the residents, it really is people want the sidewalk, but then they see what it costs, not money wise, but there's a cost to it on your road. And I think that's something that if we learned anything from trying to make things move fast in town, it's just not a good idea. So unless that whole street, like Richards Road, I have a petition, everyone on the road signed that they want a sidewalk. So that's great, right? Easy enough to do. because they want it. But if there's anyone who doesn't, then it's hard because you don't want to cause a problem for somebody, and they all have to kind of work it out, and it has to go through quite a process to make sure that people are okay with it. So I don't want to be optimistic and say, yeah, if we had more, we could do a lot more, because I'm not sure we could. I definitely have a definite feeling that more is not going to work or not going to be better in this instance. So
Karen, I have a question with you. I
Mhm.
know John and I and some others have brought up specific cases. For instance, I look at going down 85 from the, cemetery and going across all the way to the south side. Is there any possibility of running a sidewalk down 85 over the reservoir isthmus there down on 85?
So that's like the main thing, that this huge main connector, and we had the same one on Boston Road. We have the same problem.
Right.
So there really isn't width on the roadway to do it. We can basically make a walking lane or like a bike lane, but it's not separated enough from, it's not vertically separated by like a curb, and it's not, it doesn't have any real separation. So it's really not a pedestrian. It would be more of a bike lane that we could do, and it would be narrow.
In other words, you could put paint on the ground. That's about it.
That's about it. Yes. So I've talked to DCR about the fact of, could we ever do something? Would you let us, because we'd need to bring fill in, right? And we'd have to put fill and
Something.
right. Would they be willing for that? And if you put sheet pile in and then filled there and limited, maybe, and they're like, look, we could talk about it. So they're willing to talk about it, but the cost associated with that is, I mean, I didn't really look into it, partly because of, you've still got conservation, you've got MWRA because they own the water, DCR owns the land, and then it still is considered an outstanding resource, water in the area. So
Instead,
I'm not sure what the government would do beyond DCR.
True. And were the only conversations about putting in fill and maybe not putting in some pilings and some sort of substructure on the side?
No, so we did talk about a couple things also, like if you could cantilever almost off of that, off of the road, like, drill it in a little bit, I guess. It would have to be almost like a grate, like a sidewalk grate, right? So the snow would fall through and all that. And that's something that vaguely looked at. It's a big enough piece of a project that even just the design, just even kind of conceptual, is going to cost us to do. So it needs to be something that people think was a great idea, and that we really we pursue at least at a conceptual level, but it would cost money to do that. And I'm not saying that Arpa might not be a great opportunity to do something like that, but at the same time, I know that the town has a bunch of needs. So that is overall, the reservoir is a huge problem for the town. It cuts our water system. It cuts our or creates bottlenecks in it. Huge bottlenecks in our road system, as does 490, not 495, the Mass Pike and Route 9, right? So we have all these bottlenecks in our north-south way of utilities. I mean, even if you look at the utility poles across, the reservoir is this huge bottleneck, and then it gets compounded with Route 9, and then compounded again by the Pike, and any kind of crossing there would be great.
Is there any possibility of running a bridge over that, running a sidewalk either over or alongside that bridge on Route 9 on 85?
There is actually a little bit of a sidewalk on that. It would not be ADA compliant, I don't think. But alongside it being over Route 9, that might be difficult. But if we could clean that up enough and maybe get them to let us narrow the lane across the bridge. You know, if DOT would narrow the lane so that we could make the sidewalk actually be wider, that would, if we could do that, and I don't know if they would let us, but it would probably be worth a conversation.
Could it also be possible, as we were talking about, sort of cantilever and run one along the outside of it on one side?
Running something over Route 9, I think might be difficult. So, because we don't own the bridge on either under or like the bridge itself or anything. So that would be something that DOT would have to be okay with. And I know going over, because we just did something with some wires, fiber optic stuff. That just, even that is a huge complication for them for some reason. So I'm not saying they wouldn't do it. I just think they might prefer to try to work within the structure they have, but I could be wrong. So, but it's something the town definitely could go forward to DOT and ask them about.
And I'm gathering that the cost we're talking about is in the millions for a project like running it all the way down 85, given the constraints that you were talking about.
Yes, yes. If we were trying to get it across 9 and across the causeway, I think we were talking in the millions. Improving the one that already exists further down on Corderville, that whole project's only 2.5 million. And that's just improving that sidewalk that already exists, making it wider and making sure, you know, it meets the ADA standards.
So that's from like Mount Vickery down to the,
No, that comes all the way up to, well, I guess really to us, to the DPW.
oh, to the
itself.
DPW.
So it's not much farther than Mount Vickery. It seems farther, but it's not that far. Yes.
So from the DPW all the way down to the train station.
Yes,
Yeah, it's that section though from Mount Vickery down that's really not in great shape.
correct.
When you were talking about narrowing the driving lanes on the bridge, Ken's trucks turned around there all the time. I don't know how that would work
Affect them.
if
Yep.
we narrowed.
That might cause a problem. Yep.
So, Karen, you were talking about the sidewalks that you'd use ARPA fund and complete streets grant funding for.
Yes.
So if you didn't get the grant funding, would we be able to do any of the sidewalks?
So we should know we would apply for the Complete Streets grant prior to the contract being let, right? So we would still be able, so we would end up having to ask town meeting for just more. Because at this point, I think Corderville Road is going to become a warrant article. So we'd have to put it into the article. And the Complete Streets would be taking out of it versus, and I guess if there was ARPA money going towards it, that would come out too. So the article would just be less. Yeah.
So the intention is that, so next annual town meeting, that Corderville Road be on the warrant, unless it's funded by Complete Streets and ARPA funding?
It would still be on the warrant because there's still drainage and roadway work that has to be done that would not be covered under Complete Streets. And that's
Okay.
not what we were asking for ARPA, so ARPA either.
Okay.
But if we did Corderville, we would probably try to roll a sidewalk into Richards Road and try to at least finish the connection up to, I know there's no sidewalk on Oregon, but at least try to get a sidewalk up that far so that we got to the Mass Pike Bridge on Woodland. And then at that point, things can be determined on where we would go from there. There's really no space on Oregon without doing a drainage and trees. Breakneck Hill, people keep asking for one, but same thing, you know, drainage and trees.
It's not wide enough to drive on, never mind put a sidewalk on it.
Yeah, we'd have to do a lot of work on those,
Yeah.
a lot of those
Nope.
roads.
So Woodland's a good one because a lot of people walk on that and it's
Yeah,
not really conducive. So just so to recap, so if you get the $400,000 in ARPA, where it's going to be directed is to the Corderville repair sidewalk, the whole street project from Mount Vickery down, Marlboro Road.
so we would take what was needed for Corderville if we didn't get complete streets. We would try to get some on Richards. And again, like the complete streets, we're gonna plan on keep using, so then once we paid Corderville, we could go north on 85. From St. Mark's Street north, and we could get that one done. And then, so it's one of those things, it's just because of the way it would probably be paced out. I don't know, by 2026, it's tough to make sure that we're spent, right? It could be allocated easy enough by 24, but I always worry about the spending just because if, to really get the town meeting to approve all the rest of the money for certain roads or something, it could be a problem because the sidewalks, obviously they need drainage. And if we don't include drainage as part of the sidewalk work, or in the complete streets, they will let you do some drainage for it. So like I said, it is the way we look at what the money would be for. So if ARPA was set that it's just sidewalks, that's going to mean it's going to do the gravel, the grading, the granite and paving, or concrete or berm if it's not granite. Like that's what we would end up doing drainage with something else. If unless you said including drainage, right? So it's how it gets worded out on how the selectmen and you all decide it should get spent.
Is there pervious sidewalk material?
There, you can use that same pervious pavement that they have, and that could be used. We didn't have a lot of luck with it where we did have it installed in town, but sidewalks, it might work a little bit better because it not quite as much sand, because it's basically at a lot of air gaps, right? So you have the sand kind of fills it, can be problematic for it during the winter, but it's something that town can look into to see if it's gotten any better too, because obviously pavement technology does change too. It doesn't seem it, but it does.
Thank you, Karen.
So if we talk about the three streets, the Corderville, Richard, and then St. Mark's North, and I know we're saying that maybe it's hard to fit all that in by 26, but is that what the 400 allows us to do, assuming we get the complete streets grant, or is there more money to do just those three parts needed? Like if we allocate the 400, is the expectation that those three things would be paid for as long as we got complete streets?
If we were able to get the complete streets for Corderville and for Marlboro Road, then I think any leftover from Marlboro, Woodland, and Richards to actually build just the sidewalk piece of it, the 400 to normally would be okay, right? It's like I said, depends on how the pricing goes now, where it's a little wonky, but I think, and even if it didn't fully cover it, it's going to bring it pretty far along and make it would still be good, right? Like it's still, it's less that has to be allocated through taxes, but at the same time, it's taking it away from something else you guys might want to do. But I think generally it's not I think 400, it's a good number that gets a lot of work done. So that's sort of why I usually kind of go with that number. It does a lot. It would do that, and especially if we got the complete streets.
And there's no sort of like next chunk that we think could roll up into this if there was more money.
Well, no, that's just it. There is. other spots that are kind of readily available for it, where they already have the width. We're looking at doing a shared use path along, which is a little different, obviously, than a sidewalk, but along Framingham Road. We were thinking of trying to get that into a tip project, but along Framingham Road, and then the piece of Marlborough Road that comes from, that basically isn't, it before it turns, right? So that hooks into Framingham Road. So from Marlborough Town Line to the intersection with what I think is technically Newton Street, not Framingham Road there, but that piece, you know, if we have a lot of width already there, and there's already some drainage in place. So I think that's a spot that we could add it pretty quickly if there was, or get the design done pretty quickly. And I do think that doesn't have a lot of impact on residents, because there's not a lot of residents on the road directly in certain areas, and they're not as affected because the road's already wide and has a lot of space. So people are able to walk in the breakdown lane, but if you actually put a sidewalk there and a bike lane, it would make it safer. So there's no chance someone's gonna park on you or park on the way, or you're having to go around any of that. So that's a place that's somewhere we've talked about a lot, but we haven't acted on because there's also a lot of other work that needs to be done. That intersection with Acre Bridge kind of needs to be dealt with. It might be like a traffic circle kind of issue, and that then makes everyone go, oh no, not a rotary in the middle of our town, and that freaks everyone out too. So there has to be a lot of discussion about that too. So that's why a lot of times, the ideas are there and we're looking towards it, but there's pieces that just, I worry that the 2026 could cause us a problem.
What about on the south side of town? Is there anything, or just sort of areas outside of kind of that main area of town besides Richards? Or are there any other kind of neighborhoods or areas that?
Yes, there's one that really could use it, and it is Parkerville Road, south side. The residents do want one there, and it definitely would be great to have one. It needs drainage. It's a pretty rural street. It's got some width. We've got a good right of way there, like, so space wise there's space, not necessarily the amount that's paved currently, but the amount of actual land the town has is adequate for it. But it would involve trees and drainage on that area. But like I said, it has been requested by many people on Parkerville Road south side for that people are very interested in it, partly because of the school, obviously. But also there are a lot of people who walk on that road.
So Corderville, Richards, St. Mark's North rolls up in the 400. If we took it out to that sort of next level of things, so now we're talking about Framingham Road, shared use path, going over towards Newton Street, I guess, kind of around. And then this Parkerville piece, do we have a sense, like, if we were looking at doing something like that additional, like, is there more money that we could add there?
Let me look at this thing right now.
It was Woodland part of the first chunk?
Yes, we were trying to get it up Woodland also. So I think, all right, so I'm just looking at our complete streets plan. New sidewalk and Parkville south of 9. The complete streets is calling that to be a about 425,000 with 400 funded out of complete streets for Parkerville. And that's because they can only fund 400 at any one time.
So that's a plus 25 is or it's plus 4. Okay.
Yeah. So if we could get complete streets for it, but you can only get 400 out at one time. So once that project's done, you can get another 400, or you put in for a project and say it's 100 because you've only managed to spend 100 of the old, right? So you can only ever have 400 out, I guess. It's not a loan, it's a grant, but it's a,
You always have a $400,000 kind of working pool, and you can
Yes.
replenish it every year, but you can only ever have sort of that much sort of sitting.
yes, perfect,
Yeah.
that's exactly,
Yeah.
yes. So let's see.
And then the shared use one for Framingham Road.
That's the one I'm looking for. I'm having a hard time finding that. Shared use path, Main Street. Okay, there it is, Framingham Road. So Framingham Road, all right, because it's so long, that's saying 980,000 total cost. Because that's big, that's long.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's again,
So-
you'd have the 400 to apply to it but you have
Yeah.
to sort of do it the next year, and then you'd need another, 600,000 to make that one work.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And then let's see. Woodland north of 90, Woodland south of 90. So the Woodland piece south of 90 is, there's actually, that's coming in at needing the 400 from Complete Streets and being another 180 from other sources. So that actually, that seems high. I'll have to look into that, because I wonder if it's, because we already have sidewalk on a good piece of that.
Right now, we're sort of sitting around 1.2 million, which would let us do sort of a significant chunk of kind of ready to go projects. And we don't know that we could get it all completed within 2026. And there's a dependency on getting this sort of continued replenishment of Complete Streets money. But in theory, that would be sort of like the bucket of what is easily doable right now. Is that an accurate statement? Is there any other kind of work that you would categorize as a clear project that you think doesn't require tons and tons of, stakeholder buy-in from residents that we don't have yet?
Karen, can I?
No,
ask you-
I don't think we have, or I can't think of another one that would
Okay.
be easy-ish.
Karen, could I ask you how much that section of Parkerville would be?
That section, I think, I think we just said 425.
Is that what it would be? Okay.
Yeah.
So 400 does Corderville, including Richards and St. Mark's North. 1.2 does Corderville, Richards, St. Mark's North, Woodland, the shared use path from Framingham to Newton Street, and Parkerville Road.
Yeah, based on our numbers of the Complete Streets plan, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Which,
So that's kind of like
like
the
I
range.
said,
Yeah.
yeah, so, and like I said, things are just bidding crazy because of basically fuel prices are kind of killing a lot of that with paving.
Yeah, so it's those are estimates. The numbers could end up coming back different, but that's kind of what we're
Yes.
thinking. And yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it's kind of like those, if we look at it as those things, if we wanted to get those done. And we said, these are our priority list of things we want to try to get, and it's $1 million that will towards it, then we work with that, right? And so we say, all right, well, bid out, and it turns out just in general, 2 years from now, when we bid something, it comes out higher, but it's not, because it's just regular inflation, not craziness. If that happens, then, okay, town needs to come up with just more to get that done, or, all right, out of the priority list from ARPA, this is what we're gonna do then. We'll get these pieces of the priority list done, and this piece is gonna sit out and have to be done separate another time, or complete streeted or something else. Whatever we're given to work with, we'll maximize its use, get the biggest bang for our dollar that we can.
So if you were given the full 1.2, do you think that there's a chance it wouldn't all be spent by 2026, or is there other stuff that could be? So all right, if I'm thinking it through, right? So by 2024, all the money needs to be committed. So if we think that the money can't all be spent by 2026, we'd need to know with, sort of enough advance notice before the end of 2024 to reroute it towards something else, right?
Yes, and I
Um,
think that is doable, right?
Okay.
Like, because if we know, we'll say, because we'll get right into design and have a good idea of where we're going, right? I mean, I'll have to ask selectmen to allocate money towards design, right? But we'll say, all right, we're gonna work towards design on this and let's get a schedule out, and then at that point, be able to figure out, because like I said, if we're using complete streets money, you can only have 400 out at a time, so you have 400, use that and then go to the next thing and, you have to ask again. So, if we have more than 3 that we're asking for, we won't be able to get it to work.
Does it accelerate anything to apply ARPA money towards design?
It would, in that we just didn't have to go through the chapter 90 process, because that's normally what I would use for that. The only thing with that is that, well, and then, I mean, that's interchangeable, I guess, because then the chapter 90 could go towards the project. So yeah, I guess it would accelerate, because I guess it's money that we have in our pocket right away without any, well, it's still needs selectmen approval, so it would be the same, I think. Never
Okay,
mind.
all
Same.
right. So okay. Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Okay. Any other questions from Karen from anyone on the committee? Joe?
Karen, how do you see the money for roads going, given all the, as you say, wonky quotes coming back?
I've heard people are having some issues with their bids right now. We'll know tomorrow a little bit. I was putting together a list of roads for our newer contract now, and I think we'll bid it with the idea that we might want to abandon it, right, and just not award, depending on how it comes back. Because again, it's concerning. You don't want to spend so much more. Like a ton of asphalt still only lasts the same amount, whether the ton costs you $65 or $106, right? Like it's not better because it costs $106, right? So you hate to do that if you think the price could come back down to the $68 again. So that's
Is it
what?
mostly related to petroleum costs at the moment?
It's a little bit of everything. So kind of a weird thing that's happened with the COVID money is that the state kind of was, and I guess government in general, is throwing so much money out there that there's so many projects that people are able to really pick and choose what they want to do and say, you know what, that town, that would be a convenient one for us to have. That's great, but we're busy enough. So $80 a ton, right? Which you wouldn't normally have to pay. So we're seeing that with a lot of stuff. And we saw that with our bids last year quite a bit. And we were able to get a good bid because we put so much stuff into one contract. So it's like a $2.5 million contract out there. But it took 3 tries for me to get the kind of the cost to a spot where they made sense. So you have that, but now since then, we obviously had this crazy petroleum issue, which affects the cost a decent amount. And you actually have to have that allowance. You have to have a in our contracts for any kind of pavement, you have to have that in case the price of per ton of liquid asphalt changes more than 5%. You have to allow that into, that accommodation. You have to accommodate for that. But so you have a little bit of that, but then it's also just the fuel to run the machines and stuff too. So that now brought the labor costs up, and that's where we end up having it's just kind of like an overall bad time.
So you don't necessarily see a shortness of money in the road budget. You see the cost over expanding, and so therefore you're going to wait for the cost to come down before you reallocate. Is that correct?
I think so. Yes. If it turns out that our price doesn't come in good.
All right. And on the high side, I mean, looking forward, do you think that the roads are adequately funded? And, what roads are you going to do right now?
So I have, with capital, I've been going over what we were thinking of doing. We generally do $1.5 million or $1.5 to $2 million every other year worth of work. We tend to keep a little bit more at a maintenance level and not do projects so much in town. We only just started the projects with Main Street way back, but that didn't cost us. That was $9 million of federal and state money. And we paid for the engineering with Chapter 90. So that was actually a free project. But it took so long to get everyone to buy in and to approve and agree to it. It kind of, so, all right, now we got Corderville, we'll see how that goes. We've got this various streets project, which was kind of part of like an extension of the Main Street project. So road money just for maintenance, we're I think well funded, but the problem is so like Pine Hill Road needs to be paved. It's obvious needs to be paved, but it needs drainage to make your paving worth it, right? So you're going to put drainage in. If you're going to put drainage in, you're going to pave that road. You got to at least have the sidewalk discussion, right? Because there's open space at the end of that. And that's where it gets to be, maybe you just sit on Pine Hill Road for a little bit and work on other things with the $1.5 million that we use for maintenance, and then decide if we're actually going to make a whole project up there. And that's why sometimes like some of the roads that you're like, why isn't this getting paved? Yeah, because it needs more than just pavement. So we look at it a little bit. Maybe it needs to sit a little bit and figure out exactly what needs to be done and how much people actually want to spend on something. Not really a great thing to be able to do, but you only have so much money, and that the trough is only so thick or so deep for all of us in town, and we all are drinking from it. So you don't want to expand the trough too much.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? Does everyone feel really clear on kind of what is available around this money, what we can do with it, so that we sort of get into the sort of meatier conversation next week? We don't have any lingering questions. Okay. Good. Karen, anything else that you think will be valuable to add or that'd be useful for us to know?
No, I think that you guys got quite a job ahead of you. So good luck with that. I appreciate you guys letting me talk, and I talk so much. I apologize, but thank you for letting me ramble on.
This was super helpful. I think this gave a lot of clarity, and I think you touched on all the different things that we had open questions about. So I think that's super helpful.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All
Yeah,
right.
awesome.
Good luck.
Thanks, Karen. All right.
Thank you,
Bye.
Karen.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. So circling back to the agenda. So I'm just gonna quickly offer again. So we've covered our next steps at our next meeting. Is there any public comment at this point? Kevin, I see your hand. Gonna allow you to talk. Okay, Kevin, you should be able to speak.
Hi there, Arpa committee. Just a quick thing I found helpful and very interesting is that I'm not sure if maybe folks don't remember that there was apparently in 2015 a sidewalk construction recommendation committee, and they issued their report in 2016. It can be found on the town website, and it's fascinating because those folks, it was a committee of 7 members, 6 appointed by the Board of Selectmen. And actually, Karen Galligan was ex officio from the DPW. And they did a tremendous job ranking no fewer than 50 roads in terms of their needs for sidewalks over sort of 10 criteria. And it's a fascinating report. And so in thinking about, if there is sidewalk money allocated, how it ought to be spent, I think actually some folks did some wonderful work already, and the blueprint is available. So I just wanted to point that out, that this work has actually been done. And it's interesting to read. I hope that's helpful.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. I know this is something we had looked at early on in this process. I think I'd sent it around. Maybe I'll redo it. We can see kind of how it stacks up with kind of the list we have here, and kind of what's currently in the master plan. Good. Sam, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I'll expand on Kevin's comment. That is an interesting project. And Public Works Planning Board actually looked at that and talked more with some of the town engineering folks as part of the Corderville Road project that Karen mentioned earlier. And the engineering firm actually did a review of that report and re-ranked those sidewalk projects, and actually produced a pretty interesting updated map of sidewalks in town, the sidewalk network, that I'm not sure where that is, but Karen could provide access to that, and might be interesting input as well. I think there's some interesting things there in that there are some neighborhoods, for example, that have good sidewalk networks in them that were built as part of a subdivision, but really don't connect to anything. And there's some places that one could build a fairly short sidewalk connector or a trail through open space property and connect neighborhoods and dramatically expand the access that people have for walking within the neighborhoods, as opposed to walking along Route 85 or some of their higher traffic areas. So again, I think there's a lot of good information about where you could get some high impact from investing sidewalk money, both from the original study and then the update that I think was in like 2020 or 21, something like that, that Karen has access to. So just another piece of good data. Thank
I
you.
can ask her for that one as well. Good. Kevin and Sam, you both still have your hands up. Do either of you have additional comment, or is this just legacy hands? Thanks, Tim. All right. Great. Any additional public comment? If not, then again, we've already touched on our next meeting. So I did update, I just sent in the agenda, and I took Karen off it for next week. So now it's everything we just reviewed minus adding the DPW. Good. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All right, let's do a quick roll call vote. Ms. Luttrell?
Yeah.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Martell?
Aye.
Mr. Schoner?
Aye.
Ms. Rubenstein?
Aye.
I will also vote aye. It is 9:31 and this meeting is adjourned. We will talk on Tuesday. Mark your calendars. Do not forget Tuesday, not Thursday. All right. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks.
We'll talk next week. All right. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.